Hello, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us here for another Unived Live. We're excited to have sports psychologist Keerthana Swaminathan once again. And this time around, we're covering a topic which is specifically for female athletes, which is the causes of the female athlete triad. Before we get into the conversation, I'd like to introduce Keerthana once again. Keerthana Swaminathan is a sports and performance psychologist, behavioral transformation coach, and a certified linguistics programming coach. She enables and empowers performance-oriented individuals to discover themselves so they feel complete, perform in every aspect, and thrive. Keerthana is also a marathoner, and she's also a Unived customer, and she's been running since she was a teenager. Her vision is to impart a lifelong culture of high performance and thriving athletes with her services. Keerthana looks forward to creating a happier and more productive individuals with an environment where they can accomplish everything they want and do more. And without further ado, I'd like to bring on Keerthana. So here she is. Hi, Keerthana.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Once again, thank you for being a part of our Unived Live. And we're very excited to cover this topic because I think it's not talked about as much. And I think a lot of female athletes would really appreciate knowing more about this specifically. Maybe they're going through this, or maybe they have somebody that they know, or they just want to learn more about it in case, you never know down their athletic journey, they might stumble into certain circumstances where they start seeing symptoms of this female athlete triad.
Yeah.
So, um, so we'd like to begin with defining what is female athlete triad.
Okay. So, female athlete triad is three things, most importantly. First is this energy loss or energy deficiency due to disordered eating. So, that's the first part. The second part of it is amenorrhea, loss of menstrual cycle. And the third part of it is the low bone mineral density, which is more like a consequence of the other two things. So all three put together is a female athlete triad, and it is a medical condition. Um, and I know separately, each of it is prevalent at a certain percentage, but together, again, not many people report it. So, and not many people come to know about it. So it's not really reported that often. And in India, it's a little different. America, again, it's a little more popular, but in India, only now people are getting to know about it.
And is there a predominant age in which maybe somebody happens to suffer from this, or it's happening at any time throughout an athlete's life?
It's interesting because earlier, maybe a little later in life is where it would be a little more prevalent. Now it's even children as young as, when they're in their early teens, even then there's a high chance they are getting in. I mean, they might be diagnosed with the female athlete triadic thing, because again, many more women who come into sports, and the kind of exposure right now is a little different. So right now, I think earlier as well, there are people who've been diagnosed with the female athlete triad.
Okay.
If not all three together, at least either one of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And why is it that females are more prone to this? Why is there actually a male athlete triad, or is it mainly just a female?
There is. Oh, there is. See, even I think when we talk about body image issues or eating disorder, the first thing that comes to our mind is women. But the thing is, even men go through it, because anytime there exists a stereotyped female body or a stereotyped male body, there does exist a disorder because people obsess over it. Like for men, uh, men, they are more appreciative of a bulky body. They want to bulk up more, right? So that's where they are prone to in terms of eating disorders or any kind of energy deficiency. That's what it would be. But for women, it's a little different because women, it's more towards being lean, being slim, that kind of a body structure. So wherever there's a stereotyped body, which is which they are associated with, that's where we do have these issues. And yes, there is a male version as well. There is, even men go through it. Um, but again, women, I think in terms of relatively, comparatively, who speaks a lot, a little more, it's women, because again, amenorrhea is one of the very important symptoms as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's the reason.
Okay. And what is the specific cause of this condition? I think you briefly touched upon it, meaning that it's um, having a specific stereotype image.
Yeah.
So, can you please elaborate more on that? How does this, come about? What are the causes?
I know medically there are a lot of causes, but I'm not going to talk about the medical causes here. The main important cause is one's own self-image and self-esteem, and I think that's the most important part. And obviously, there are influencing factors. One of the influencing factors of one's own self-esteem is the stereotype and cultural biases that exist. And in different cultures, different body types are appreciated. And only now we speak of inclusivity and everything, but earlier there was not really a sense of inclusivity. So that is definitely one of the issues. So when people compare in a age of social media as well, there's a lot of comparison, and people kind of obsess over, this is the body image that I mean, this is the body I want, right? And that is one of the causes for a disordered eating pattern, and later amenorrhea and the rest of it. That's one of it. The second is also their peer circle and their family, how they respond to them. Have they been accepted as who they are and how they look for what they look? So I think that's very important to speak of. Again, there's a fine balance between giving of feedback and criticizing, right? So, accusing someone that their body type is a certain way and wanting to make them exercise is two different things. And somehow in our culture, we kind of don't understand that. And if you notice, in especially in the Indian culture, what happens is that the first thing we speak about is food or the way a person looks, right? And especially it comes to the women. Either you put on weight or you've lost weight.
Yes.
Other than that, people don't really know what else to talk about. So it is a cultural thing because people want to talk that. It's very quick to talk about. There's nothing personal to talk about. So that definitely is one of the causes. The way it plays in a person's mind is also, I think that's where there's a lot of inner work to be done. It impacts children a lot, especially when a girl feels unwanted. The easiest thing to do is to get her physical appearance right, because in again we all associate women to physical appearance, right? So we they want to get that right. So that kind of um, not feeling wanted, or that kind of emotion makes them feel a certain way, and that is one of the causes for disordered eating pattern, and that's one of it. The second part of it is also stress. When we don't really, I always say this, if there is any behavior which is going up and down, which is fluctuating in terms of extremities, then I always, try to look at the cause and not just the behavior alone. Now, when it comes to eating and disordered eating, I would look at it the same way. And I know a lot of people feel a certain emotion. I mean, when they don't feel a certain emotion, they kind of try to numb it. They eat. They tend to eat a lot. So, when a person feels sad, they eat an entire box of ice cream, right? So it doesn't stop with one ice cream, it keeps continuing. When we stop with that, it's fine. But then when the person keeps going on is when they realize, I mean, you know, at some point they put on weight or they don't eat enough at all. So either way, right?
And, okay. And does it usually begin with disorder eating?
Um, yes, mostly,
Okay. Okay.
mostly, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And why is there a specific sport where this syndrome or a disorder it happens?
Um, okay, I would say specifically these, but not restricted to. So if you look at swimming, highly prevalent because it's a specific body structure again. Gymnastics, ballet, dancing, any form of dance, athletics.
Mm,
I'm sure we all would have heard of this Mary Kane
yes.
story
Yeah.
about Reds and how she had osteoporosis as well at some point and she had to stop competing.
Yeah. Yes.
So that again is a classic case of the female athlete triad. So these sports, especially because they want a certain body type and they feel skinny is better to run or skinny is better to perform that particular sport. Uh, Again, it's a myth that exists. So they end up getting into that. Again, it can be coaches that pressurize them. It can be family. It can be peer. It can be something that they are going through themselves. I can't really pick one, but it's a variety of all these things.
And what I lost the question that I was going to ask you. Um, when we're looking at the early symptoms to identify that somebody is going through this, what are those symptoms? Or what are the early stages that maybe somebody can um, sense or see, or and can outside people notice this, or how can people intervene to help somebody who's going through this?
An outsider may not really be able to notice this because, again, when a person disordered eating can also mean eating excessively and purging. So maybe in a common circle, maybe they eat excessively or they eat even normally, and then they end up purging. When the purging part, no one will come to know, right? So they'll have to realize that that they're going through something. That's one thing, but otherwise, I'm sure family can recognize and friends can recognize as well. Uh, but these are very similar to other symptoms as well. So, for example, one of the symptoms is excessive fatigue
Okay.
because they don't have enough energy, right? So, excessive fatigue or very fluctuating eating pattern that they're not eating properly. We could at least ask them whether they're doing fine, even if it's not a disordered eating pattern. We could ask them if everything is okay. Uh, Again, menstrual cycle going this way, that way, or even completely stopping. I think that's one way to that definitely will answer a lot of our questions. Emotional swings, mood swings, that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are very common. Again, like I said, this is very, very common. But also when they speak, right? Sometimes if you have a constant preoccupation to food, then there's a high chance. Or maybe they are looking great, but they keep telling themselves that they're not looking good enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all these things are, few of the signs that they're going through something, and we need to probe. It need not necessarily mean the female athlete triadic or even like a disordered eating pattern, but we can definitely, we need to pay attention to them.
Okay. And you touched upon the fact that menstrual cycle being one of the pillars to the female
Yeah.
triad. However, I feel like there's still a myth or a belief that if somebody doesn't have their period, as especially if they're athletes,
Mm,
it's because they're super fit. I think growing up, this is one of the things that I remember because I was an athlete when I was younger, and I think this is one of the things that we would hear every now and then. Oh
yeah.
yeah, if you're like super fit and you hardly have any fat on you, your period stops. And it was kind of one of those things that that's what you
You
wanted.
wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, okay, I want that to happen because I want to feel fit. I want to look good, have a six pack or whatever it may be. Um, so how do we bust this myth, and how do we, especially in teenagers,
Yeah.
because I feel like this is where things might begin also,
Hmm.
early signs.
Yeah.
Uh, so how do we bust this myth? And do you feel like there's enough that is already being done to bust this myth within the women athlete community?
I I don't think there's enough which is done, but there people are doing something about it. There's no denial in that, but it's not enough because there's so much damage done already, right? So that's why it's not enough. But in terms of what can be done is, I think instead of looking at healthy and unhealthy as thin and fat, we categorize people as thin and fat. Instead of doing that, I think it's very important for us to understand what is healthy and what is unhealthy. And healthy does not mean, just looking good. It also means feeling good, which means all the other parameters in your body needs to be right. So it means you need to function right. Like, for example, in mental health, people feel if you're mentally strong, you shouldn't break down,
Right.
which is again a myth, right?
Yeah.
So how do we express to them that you need to be functional? So even in terms of this, we're talking about functioning well. We're talking about not having any issues to function. And for us to function better, we need our period. We need fats in our body. And that's something which is not spoken enough about. So I think we need to speak enough about that. And we also need to speak enough about how parents need to educate themselves and the children in terms of it's more in terms of how they treat each other. Even although they might believe that fat and thin are not ideal and healthy unhealthy is more important and all that, I don't think coaches or even parents know enough to in terms of how to put it across to children. So if they want their children to start working out or get physically active, to go out and play a sport, the first thing they end up telling is you will become fat. If you sit in front of the TV, then you'll become fat. So instead of saying that, maybe there's another way to put it across, because thin and fat are not the only thing. So it starts right there. And even in terms of coaches, in terms of, since we're talking about sport, coaches as well. So if they can, instead of saying you're thin so you're not able to perform well, or you're fat so you're not able to perform well, actually get into the parameters of it and say, hey, this is why you're not able to perform. And maybe we need to improve this and let's make it a little more functional. Then at least we get into details and we don't have these labels of thin and fat, right? And then we don't talk about, we actually embrace our menstrual cycle then, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the way forward. Educating in terms of, we know facts, that's good, but how do we put it across to our children? I think that's not spoken enough about. How do we put it across to another person? Even now we speak so much about these things, but then if we end up meeting a friend, what are we talking about? I think that awareness is important, that education is also important as to how we talk to them, how we put it across to them. It starts right there.
Yes. True, very true. I think as a society, there's so much stereotypes and that it's so hard to. I mean, I think nowadays with
Conditioning, actually.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
speaking about things more and more and trying to break down all these stereotypes,
Yeah.
all these myths, or if you look thin is because you're healthy, and if you're a little overweight is because you're unhealthy, and yeah, I think removing those labels from each one of us is definitely the first step, and
Definitely.
education, I think, is the way to go. I totally agree with that.
Yes.
Um, and how do you go about treating this with your clients?
That's the hard task. So I know we all look at this as a behavior. See, disordered eating is a behavior. Eating excessively or not eating at all, or eating and purging. It's a behavior we're looking at. But I would always go look at this as three aspects. So one is the beliefs part of it, the other is the emotion, and then comes the actual behavior. So I go get into the cause. So the belief that they hold. So for example, see, different people eat or engage in disordered eating because of different reasons. Few people, like men, engage in disordered eating patterns because of high stress. And it can be various things, it just can be various things. So we go down to that particular thing, we go down to the belief part of it, and we see if there are other variations of where they can whether they can work on stress a little differently, or whether they can channel their stress in a different way, or maybe whether we can increase their stress threshold. So I would go to the cause part of it. And when it comes to other causes apart from stress, for example, this belief that I'm fat, and if I'm not good enough if I'm fat. See, that's a belief that they're holding. So I kind of try to break those beliefs and associate another more helpful belief there, so that they engage in some other healthier behavior. So that's more important, otherwise it becomes a never ending cycle. The problem is that most of us try to treat the behavior alone. We try to just stop the person from eating something.
Correct.
At least that's what parents would do. I've seen a lot of parents doing that, saying, okay, we are going to restrict you from eating sweets from today. But there's no point, because without you knowing, she's going to go eat another piece of sweet. Maybe if not today, she's going to eat it tomorrow 10 times more.
Yes.
So it's very important for us to get into the cause, see what's troubling them, where exactly is this coming from, and then actually fix the behavior as well. So what happens, this is a long term solution, otherwise that keeps happening. I mean, there would be relapses as well.
Correct.
So yeah.
What is the prevalence of clients that you've seen or that you've treated for this disorder?
uh I so the girls I handle, I think out of, let's assume I have 10 girls I handle, out of 10, maybe in terms of disordered eating pattern, I would say at least 4 to 5.
So almost
Yeah,
50%.
almost 50%.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That is quite a high
And
rate.
but I'm talking about teenagers. I'm just restricting it to the age of, let's say, 15, 16, from 15, 16 to about 20, just
Okay.
those 4 years.
Okay.
I'm
So
not
do you,
I'm not taking other athletes.
uh,
I'm not taking other age groups, but yeah.
so do you see a lot of teenagers? Is that what does your work focus more on? Is it mostly
No,
teenage
it's
athletes?
equally balanced. So
Okay.
when it comes to adults,
Mhm.
they don't look at it as disordered eating pattern, but it certainly is, because they are not following what they want to follow, and it's not eased out all the time. I mean, sorry, it's not eased out sometimes. It's eased out all the time.
Yeah.
So that ends up becoming a lifestyle for them, and they don't realize that. So when I deal with recreational athletes who are like 50 years, and both male and even women, since they go through a lot of stress, they engage in disordered eating patterns. Now, In terms of women, when I work with women, they mostly come for weight loss, older women, right?
Okay.
And when they come for weight loss, again, they engage in either a kind of mindset that they cannot be disciplined enough, or that kind of belief, and they end up eating nonstop without any rationale. So again, that all that comes from, these are just small things. I wouldn't put this into eating disorder or any of that, but you see what I'm talking about, right? Like, we're talking about self control here, lack of self control here. That's what we're talking about. So it is there, here and there, and it's just about managing certain things a little better in these cases.
And how prevalent is it in professional athletes? I mean, we heard about the famous case with the Nike and
Yeah.
stuff, but I haven't really read much. But how prevalent is it in the professional scheme of things?
I I don't know that, because not many people report it. How many people actually report about a menstrual cycle not actually coming correctly? Not
Yeah.
many people report it, right? And many people don't even know they're engaging in a disordered eating pattern unless and until something actually happens to them. So it's not really reported for us to literally give exact figures or even approximate figures, right? So that's a little hard to say, but yes, people do go through this a lot, and I miss do sport actually. I mean, I miss weightlifting as well. Uh,
Oh,
Weightlifters also go through this a lot.
is that because they want to gain more mass?
Yeah, again, performance versus the stereotyped look.
Hmm.
That
Okay.
kind of a thing. So
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to add to our so our viewers can get a better understanding of the female athlete triad in terms of, how it affects them mentally, and what it how is it how does it come about, and what can people do if they start seeing certain symptoms?
So when you go through something like this, it's extremely mentally draining, and it's extremely important for us to notice it at the starting stages. Many women go through this, not the female athlete triad, but definitely at least like a somewhat disturbed relationship with food or body image issues, something like that. I'm going back to something which is very basic, something which all of us can relate to. Body image issues. Am I looking good enough? That kind of a thing. So I think it's very important for us to. There's nothing wrong in aspiring to become a certain number in the weighing scale. There's nothing wrong about it, but it it goes for a toss when we obsess over it, and when we think that is the ideal. So having a goal doesn't mean we need to obsess over it. I know this is something all of us can relate to. So and I think that we need to look at healthier ways and functional ways to achieve it, and restricting ourselves, or especially for kids, right? They eat a lot because they are hungry a lot, and then they purge. They really purge, and or in front of their parents they have to eat, so they end up eating and then they purge. So it's very important for us to understand that don't force children while eating. Let them eat when they're hungry, so that at least they know what they're eating and they're eating properly. And it's very important for us to understand what they are going through as well. If they're being bullied in school, especially in terms of their looks and everything. So all it's so be aware of what you're going through and what your kids are going through, or what someone else around you is going through as well. And don't obsess over the metrics are just mere indicators, they're not everything.
Totally agree. I think a lot of us at one point, obsessed over that weighing scale. I have to
Exactly.
weigh this much, or oh my gosh, I just put on 5 pounds. And yeah, I think it's a metric that we shouldn't go by. I think there's other metrics that tell you if you're healthy or not, and it's not just
Yeah.
weight. I think a lot of us forget. Oh, we see like a skinny person and say, "Oh, I think that person must be really healthy because they're skinny. But in reality, if you were to take their, uh, blood work and really see how their
Yeah,
system is functioning, they might not be that healthy. And you,
exactly.
on the other hand, might be even healthier than them. So, yes, I think there's a lot of work to be done in regards to removing those labels,
Yes,
acceptance, definitely image acceptance,
yes,
and less pressure. I think as parents, as a family, I think we need to be a little bit more,
empathetic.
yes, and have a lot more communication. And like you said, the conversation shouldn't always be around food, and we
Yeah,
should
yeah,
force our kids to eat if they don't want to eat, because I think that's when
yeah.
a lot of the relationship issues with food
Food
begin.
happens. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. I think we didn't really touch upon the other aspects of, what you said. It starts with this and it all leads to, no
Yeah,
period,
yeah,
osteoporosis or fractures.
yeah,
But I think as athletes, yeah, one has to be mindful,
yeah.
um, and definitely analyze if, like, for instance, the case with the Nike coach. I think we have to analyze that relationship between the coach and the athlete. If it's not a healthy one, I think there might be issues that happen there as well. So, yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of work still to be done. But I think you're doing a great work, um, uh, uh, helping, especially here in India now with sports, and things are picking up a lot more. People are not just running, but I think overall there's a lot more awareness in sports and kids starting at a younger age.
Absolutely.
So definitely, I can understand why you're seeing also teenagers
Yeah.
uh,
No,
athlete.
on the other hand, it's so nice where there are athletes who have had eating disorders in the past and
Mhm.
who've taken up some other sport
Mhm.
in order to overcome it.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. Wow.
So it was really good to I think one of the athletes, I think she was a ballet dancer, and then she took up weightlifting after a point because she became, she had an eating disorder, and then she had to do that. She literally had to work on herself and get into weight training.
Yeah.
So similarly, I know many such stories, and I feel like sport is one way, you can actually yourself.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely. So, well, if you're out there and you can relate to this issue, and if you need somebody to talk to about it, do reach out to Keerthana. I think she would definitely be more than happy to assist you and help you overcome what you're going through. I think yes, we have to be more empathetic and support those that need it. And before we go, I have a little rapid fire for you, just something fun.
Yeah.
Um, so, winter or summer?
Summer.
Oh, okay. What comes to mind when you hear the word psychologist?
To my mind, safe space.
Okay. Introvert or extrovert?
Mm, I can't pick anything apart from this, can I?
No.
Um, Introvert.
Okay. Sweet or salty?
Salty.
What's your favorite Unived product?
Your gels and your pea protein.
Great. Fantastic. Well, those were our 5 questions or 5 rapid fire questions for you.
Right.
Thank you once again for taking the time to speak about this topic. And what would you like to leave the audience with? I know we've done 2 sessions with you, one on stress and athletes and burnout, and now we've done one on specifically female athletes. Anything that you'd like to leave the audience with?
I think in terms of both the lives we've done, and the only thing I would tell is start working on yourself and be aware that something's going on. There's nothing wrong in not being okay. So, if something's not okay, then introspect, and if you need help, seek help.
Great. Thank you so much. And like I said, if you want to reach out to Keerthana, her details will be at the bottom of at the description of this live. You can read, there's her website, and also you can reach out to her on Instagram. And yeah, and do let us know if there's any other topic that you would like us to cover in regards to mental health or mental well-being. I think this is a vast topic, and there's a lot of things to cover, and especially as athletes, mental training is definitely one aspect. So let us know what you would like us to cover in the future. Thank you, Keerthana, and have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.